So today's random act of kindness is you don't have to listen to me speak. So my card had me listed because we lined up the program, but I found somebody much more knowledgeable to be able to present this. So Andrew Johnson, you'll hear a little bit about it, but Missouri River Energy Services, or MRES, is our supplemental energy provider here in the community. And Andrew is a member, what's your title, Andrew? Member Program Coordinator for MRES. He's a native of Del Rapids. He worked in different media before he came to Missouri River about 5 years ago. He lives in T, and if I understand correctly, he has 4 kids and 2 dogs, and I'll let you figure out who listens better between the kids and the dogs. So please help me welcome Andrew Johnson.
Well, thanks for the kind introduction. It's an honor to be here presenting to you today. We're going to talk about the value of public power and what a gem you have here in Vermillion by being served by a municipally owned local electric utility. So briefly, here's about the 5 topics we're going to try to cover in about 15 minutes. So who exactly is Missouri River Energy Services? We're going to talk about value through joint action. Missouri River is a joint action agency. We'll get into that. So we'll talk about the value Vermillion Light and Power has as a member of MRES. We'll also talk about, you'll hear this term a lot, the value of public power and what that exactly means in real terms, in real dollars here in Vermillion. We'll talk about your power supply, and then I don't think I'll spend too much time on the additional programs and services that we offer to all of our members, but afterward, actually during the presentation, if you have questions, feel free to shout, raise your hand, whatever. We'll go through them right away. I don't mind being interrupted. We'll breeze through those, and at the end we'll leave even additional time for questions. So that's the plan. If it's okay with you, we'll get right into it. So Missouri River Energy Services, we have 61 members across 4 states. 6 in North Dakota, 25 in Minnesota, 12 here in South Dakota, and 18 down in Iowa. We were founded in 1965, so 60 years ago. We just celebrated our 60-year anniversary at our annual meeting earlier this spring. We're governed by a 13-member board of directors. We have 4 from South Dakota, 1 from North Dakota, 5 from Minnesota, and 3 from Iowa. And your city manager, John Prescott, is one of our board members, and we thank him for his service and also for the invitation to speak here today. It means a lot. Engaged board members are key to driving our organization. We're a member service, member support organization, and we're nothing without our members. Across our entire footprint, we serve a little over 330,000 people. And Missouri River itself, as John mentioned, we're the supplemental power provider. All but 2 of our members receive a lion's share of their power from the Western Area Power Administration. And we'll get into that in a little bit. Otherwise, we're going to call that WAPA from now on. But we're responsible for the other 57%. And that varies by member, because every member like Vermillion Light and Power gets a capped amount of WAPA power. So any power above and beyond that, as their supplemental power provider, we provide that. And if you aggregate them all together, all the power we ship out, including WAPA power, about 45% of the power needs of our 61 members are met by renewable power supply. Next, here's a quick map, just kind of gives you an idea of where our members are located. You can see, and that's kind of small print, but if you go to our website, which is just mrenergy.com, it gives a breakdown of all these members. You'll see in some neighboring communities here in South Dakota, Beersford, or some similar sized towns, Pierre, maybe some larger towns like Watertown, Brookings, but we also serve, I think our 2 smallest members are Riverdale, North Dakota, and Pickstown. And you could throw Faith in there too, but we serve some very small municipal electric utilities all the way up to our largest member, which is Moorhead, Minnesota. So what is joint action? And to understand what joint action is, you have to understand why all these communities decided to get together. And in the 1960s, a bunch of Northwest Iowa municipal utilities got together because they wanted to guarantee their WAPA allocation. The only way they could do that was by joining forces. And then in the 1970s, when those WAPA allocations, the amount of hydropower the dams were sending out to each of these people who had allocations were capped, more and more utilities joined in. They wanted to hang on to that low, it's the lowest cost power there is, it's cost-based, it means it doesn't depend on the market, it is what it is to recoup, operating costs of the dams. So, in addition to ensuring their WAPA supply, a primary benefit of working together with other utilities through Missouri River is to gain economies of scale. And in the early days of Missouri River, economies of scale meant working together to secure that power supply, but today it means much more. Whoop. Don't hit that button. Where's my mouse? I don't need to read my notes, we'll just talk through it. Shoot from the hip here a little bit. So a lot of that is shared resources. So together, these 61 members have a larger voice in Washington when it comes to matters of protecting that WAPA allocation. That's first and foremost. And we have Mayor John Cole here, who serves on the APPA Policymakers Council, and our MRES Ambassador, Rich Holland, who are both super engaged, and we thank them for their efforts. And they travel out to Washington, they volunteer to do this, to ensure that your federal legislators hear from constituents how important that power is. And we'll get into the dollars and cents of it later, where you'll see the impact that WAPA power has on your power supply bill. But please know we're active not only in Washington, but we're also very active with a legislative voice, and we advocate on your behalf at the state and regional level as well. We don't typically get involved unless it comes down to utility-specific things, but we keep our eye on a number of pieces of legislation that could impact rates, service territories, other things like that. Some of the shared resources, services, and opportunities are many of the programs our members benefit from today. We're able to facilitate, lower cost. You have more of a voice with vendors as they serve your community. I know in Vermillion, you've implemented some AMI, some smart grid tech. They use the same vendor that we work with, so through that relationship, the name of the vendor is Eaton. We have a bigger voice with Eaton, and we can kind of lean on them a little bit to help provide better service to Vermillion. Along with the economies of scale and with the advocacy efforts that we employ at the state and federal level, there's also a reduced risk that comes along with being a member of Missouri River. So that includes affordability, reliability. It reduces your risk of having to go out and find power on your own. We have a very diverse generation portfolio, both of generation source and geographic location. We'll look at that a little bit later, but that ensures that your power, if the wind isn't blowing over here, we have other resources that can kick in and make sure that power deliveries are scheduled. That's our end of the bargain that we have to hold up every day. And of course, who knows what's coming around the corner. So an important part of membership in Missouri River, and one of the joint action benefits, is meeting future challenges together. You see the ebb and flow every 4 years perhaps. You never know what's coming around the bend as far as regulation or what types of fuel source are preferred. And we're here to help Vermillion and all of our members navigate those waters. So, yeah.
I have a question. So, this makes sense, like why we would want to be a member, but it seems like there's a lot of communities that aren't. Is there many reasons why they're not?
There's a long answer and a short answer to that. There are more municipal utilities around, some of whom do belong to other joint action agencies like Heartland Energy, if you've heard that name. They have a number of small towns in a similar footprint. Others are just on their own because they're big enough to be on their own. Ours specifically relates to utilities with a WAPA allocation. Like I said, 2 of them don't, and they just came in after 2010, but we're very selective of future members. You know, I think a lot of people from the outside looking in would agree with you. Why wouldn't we want to join in on something like this? And later on, you'll see some actual hard data that will probably reaffirm that feeling. But what I will tell you, and I was briefly talking with John before this, when you went through your values of Rotary, and help me out, what are they?
Build goodwill.
Build goodwill. So those are kind of the same principles we operate with. So if a new member comes on, we have to ask those questions, or approaches us, we have to ask those same questions. Is this good for the 61 members we currently have? What will it do for A, B, C, and D? Does it make sense? Is it beneficial? So a very similar concept when it comes to joint action. So we're very protective of our members, and we want to keep it that way. We don't want to be exclusive in that sense, but at the same time very protective. We want to be your energy partner. We don't want to, you know, dilute that pool. Does that help a little bit and answer your question? Sure.
What are the 2 lake towers?
Pella, Iowa, and Hutchinson, Minnesota. Excuse me. And can everyone hear me okay if I move around up here? All right, so value through joint action. Next, we're going to talk about the value of public power. And initially, I had an interactive slide that was going to ask you all what words came to mind when we talked about public power, but I scratched that, and I'm just going to tell you. So some of the pillars of public power, and these are the most important factors that we can talk about today. It boils down to it's locally owned. Its customers own the utility. The ratepayers own the utility, the municipal utility. It's local control and service with a laser focus on what's best for the community. Again, similar to that beneficial truth of Rotary. In Vermillion, and as far as customer service, you have a local workforce that can respond quickly. They know Vermillion inside and out. We talked about some of the smart grid technologies they employ to understand where and when an outage happens, and their response time is like that. So it's super impressive, the reliability metrics and the local service that you get as a Vermillion Light and Power customer. Plus, decisions on how the utility is run are made right here in Vermillion. They're not made by a separate board elsewhere. So your city council governs the utility, and you as citizens have a voice in that, right? You can participate in that, and you can step in front of the council and lay out concerns and engage in that process. We're affordable. We're going to go into some rate things later that I hope open your eyes to how valuable your municipal utility is to you. And last but not least is we're not for profit. So both Missouri River and the city utility are not for profit. That means any cost savings are passed directly back on to you. So now that we kind of extolled the benefits of public power, municipal power, I think it's important to talk, and John asked me to do this, there's essentially 3 different types of utilities. There are some offshoots, but essentially it boils down to 3. The first we'll talk about is public power. That's us, right? Municipal utilities. Not-for-profit, community-owned, governed locally. Rural electric co-ops, they were formed by the REA back in 1937, and if you drive around, you can still see some of those old REA poles out in the country. They're kind of cool. I see some heads nodding. They're very similar from the outside looking in, but the biggest thing between public power and rural electric co-ops is funding mechanisms. As a municipal utility, you have access to tax-exempt bonds to build infrastructure, and that's super important. Whereas rural electric co-ops have to go to some federal funding. And of course, investor-owned, for-profit, shareholder-owned, and they're governed by private boards. So there's profit involved there instead of not-for-profit. So just paints the picture. In total, I think in South Dakota, there's 6 IOUs that have service territory footprints. I'm not sure the number of co-ops, but there's, nationwide, there's 2,000 municipal utilities, but we serve 1 in 7 people. So what is that, 13%? So 2,000 utilities nationwide serve about 1 in 7 that are municipally owned. Whereas investor-owned, I mean, there's only a handful of them, and they provide service to the lion's share of the American population. So it's imbalanced as far as the number of utilities and how many people they serve, as opposed to IOUs where you have a small number serving a large amount of people. These are your Excels, Mid-American, some of the bigger ones. So 3 different utilities, you're in the good one. And essentially, going back to why it's local, public power utilities are similar to our public schools and libraries. The only difference is, I mean, you do have to pay a fee for service, but they're community-owned, they're a division of local government, and they're governed locally, whether it's by city council here. Some of our other members have an appointed commission. They have an electric utilities commission. Cost-wise, this is one of our pillars. Public power is affordable. So on a national scale, investor-owned utilities come in at about 13.9 cents per kilowatt hour, whereas public power utilities come in at about 12.4 cents. We'll talk more about your specific rates here in a minute, but just national average, we're about 1.5 cents lower. We're also reliable. I mentioned that earlier. Reliability is perhaps the most important thing we can provide to customers, and I think John would echo that. You want to be sure when you hit the light switch it comes on. If you're running a business, this is talking about business continuity. Longer and more often your power stays on, the better. Based on a 10-year average, and I just pulled this data the other day, rural co-ops average each year almost 3 hours of downtime. IOUs are a little over 2 hours, and public power is about an hour. That's based on a 10-year national average across the board. And I know here in Vermillion, especially with buried lines and with some of the technology we talked about earlier, a lot of investment has gone into those transmission and distribution infrastructure that Rich was talking about earlier to make sure that you have reliable power. Last, public power invests in the community. As a public power utility, Vermillion Light and Power passes savings on directly to its customers and helps fund community development. And it's worth noting that Vermillion Light and Power annually makes transfers to fund other activities in Vermillion. For example, from 2020 to 2023, the electric utility transferred a total of $3,756,000, or about 11.6% of its operating revenues. Of this total, about $3.3 million was for operating transfers to the general fund, and another $425,000 was for the city streetscape project. So that's continued investment back into the community. And bear in mind, to get the same level of dollar amount, the only other way to recoup that kind of reinvestment from your utility would be property tax, sales tax, or other fees that would, raise the cost of living here in Vermillion. I can't stress that enough. So your utility is extremely valuable in that it helps keep sales tax, property tax where they're at. Any questions on this so far? All right, we'll keep rolling. So now we'll get into power supply, and I want the next couple slides to just illustrate how important your WAPA allocation is to Vermillion. So you have two contracts, essentially, where you get your power from. One, Vermillion Light and Power has a direct contract with WAPA, and you also have a supplemental agreement with Missouri River. As mentioned, 59 of the 61 MRES members have that WAPA allocation, and annually that WAPA allocation kicks out about 40% of our members' power needs. Through Missouri River, we have 58 members with the S1 agreement, the Supplemental 1 agreement, and that's a 30-year agreement through January 2057. 3 members have non-S1 agreements with Missouri River. 2 are the ones we mentioned, Pella and Hutchinson, and then we have another one. Atlantic, Iowa does have some WAPA power, but they have their supplemental agreement is a little bit different. And so basically what that means, again, is we supply everything on top of that WAPA contract. But it's important to understand you still have a direct relationship with WAPA. Now part of this, for those firm service contracts and with the supplemental contract, these are long-term agreements, and we do that for a number of reasons. One, it protects our members, and one, it protects us, and it helps us gain access to tax-exempt bond financing, because when they look at our financial picture, Missouri River's financial picture, and they rate our bonds where we have to go out and borrow money, we have super high bond ratings, which means super low interest rates, and that's a credit to our member utilities. We're only as financially viable as our member utilities. So their financial strength, your financial strength is our financial strength. So any questions on these? I'll just mention briefly, as part of the supplemental agreement, we handle your WAPA billing for you. You still have the contract, but they send us all the stuff. We put it on the bill to Vermillion Light and Power as a pass-through with no markup whatsoever. It's an administrative services agreement. We just pass along the cost directly to you. And we also schedule all your power. One of the most underrated aspects of Missouri River is we have a control center, an operations center, that is monitoring daily power markets. And they're doing forecasting and hedging risk and all this stuff on your behalf, because earlier when Rich was talking about transmission recovery and where those costs come from, who here is a duck hunter? Anyone? Former duck, well, used to have flyways, right? Pacific Flyway, the Mountain West Flyway. We're in the Central Flyway, the Mississippi Flyway, where ducks would migrate down these, historically, down these flyways. In the energy industry, you hear a lot about the grid, right? And this nebulous thing that exists out there that connects us all to power. Well, think of the grid broken up into almost flyways. And these are called regional transmission organizations. And Vermillion's in the Southwest Power Pool, which extends from the lower Canadian provinces all the way down to about Texas, right through the heartland. That's your grid. And so we are actively monitoring wind, sun, and all the power costs up and down, because sometimes it makes sense for us to buy cheaper power from the market than to generate it on our own. So that's how we keep costs down. When we're a windy day like today, I know the guys in back are checking out the wind forecast, and they're looking where is power the lowest cost. Think of it like a grain elevator. You dump all your grain, man, are people cutting corn right now? You can probably hear my allergies, but it's an exciting time of year. I love it. But all these farmers take their grain to the elevator, they dump it off. And someone buys that grain, it doesn't guarantee they get that corn kernel from this farmer's 40 acres over here, right? It's more of a financial market instead of a physical market. And that's what the energy market has evolved into over the years. It's no longer a physical market where you're buying power directly from a source, you're buying from a financial market, where all the energy goes to the grid, and then, physics is still physics, you're gonna get electrons from the nearest source, but you're buying chunks of power based on, or you're receiving chunks of power from WAPA, and we're buying chunks of power to give to you at the cheapest cost possible, whether we're generating them or buying them from the market. Does that help paint the picture a little bit? All right. if you have questions, please ask. So why does WAPA power matter? At the beginning of the presentation, I said, about 40% of Missouri River members get their power from, or total from WAPA. 40% total from WAPA. In Vermillion, your WAPA allocation accounts for about 56% of your power. Again, this is super important. These are cost-based rates. They're not set by the market, but are calculated to ensure WAPA recovers its operating costs and the repayment of federal investments in the dams and facilities up and down the Missouri River. Super important. The supplemental power you get from Missouri River is about, the other 44%. And I'm going to show you a map here of where all of our generation resources are, but we've developed a low-cost, reliable power from a diverse generation portfolio. The bill that Vermillion gets from Missouri River includes the WAPA and MRES portions of the bill for power and transmission. There's no markup on the WAPA or transmission charges, and every member, all 58 and a half, pay the same supplemental rate. The two that don't have a WAPA allocation, their rate is different. And it's a little higher, but all 59 members pay that same S1. That's important. Your bill is the same as, or the rate you're charged is the same as Melrose, Minnesota, is the same as Detroit Lakes, Minnesota, and the same as Hillsboro, North Dakota. Reliability is number one. Here's a breakdown of our generation resources. You can see the 6 main stem dams along the Missouri River, plus the Yellowtail and Canyon Ferry dams out in Montana. And then there's a list of additional wind resources, solar resources, dual fuel stations, and our coal plant in Wyoming. In 2024, here's a breakdown of where Vermillion got its power. So 58% was hydro. So 56% of that is WAPA. The other 2% is from our Red Rock facility on the Des Moines River down near Pella, Iowa. So we retrofitted the Red Rock Dam, an existing dam. We dropped a hydro facility on it. And you can see the breakdown of where your other purchases came from. Market purchases, it's hard to see, was 18%. That's important because 18% of that from the market, that's your reduced volatility margin, right? You're not exposed to the market that much. So that contributes to the power savings Vermillion gets. This is the meat and potatoes. I'm a meat and potatoes guy. I love the meal. Thanks again to Rotary for having it. I'm Norwegian, as you can tell by my body type, and I'm happy colder weather is here. Anyway, Vermillion is way over on the left at 4.8 cents. The median of 20 other regional wholesalers, that's right here in the region, is 7.6 cents. And I don't know if it'll let me scroll down to where the actual math is, but you're sitting, where did they go? So 4.8 cents. So your 2.8 cents were about 15.8% or 58% lower than the median average. That's wholesale. That's the blended cost of WAPA and Missouri River Power. And this is from 2024. What does that mean for the average customer? Here's a residential rate comparison where Vermillion's the red bar. The other yellow bars are other MRES utilities. You'll see there are a couple lower. It's hard to read. It's Watertown Pier, Vermillion, Fort Peter Brookings, and then some IOUs. And you can see for normal homes usage for a month, Vermillion's bill is about $73. And then compare that to the averages of other power providers. That's where the rubber meets the road. And that's super important. You have super low, affordable, reliable power here in Vermillion. Going a step further, here's a large commercial comparison. So Vermillion again is the red bar, and it's third lowest out of 11 other utilities. And for a business of this size, the load factor At 52%, you're looking at like a healthcare facility sized or a large hotel. So that type of business, if they're spending $12,000 a month, you know, someplace else is upwards $4,000, $5,000, $6,000 more a month for them to operate. So that's a huge thing for economic development in Vermillion. Just keep these in mind. If people approach you and say, yeah, we have cheap power, it's a great place to live. All that being said, there are rate pressures currently in the market. One is coming from WAPA, where they're going through a 2-year step increase, and then the other is coming from Missouri River, where forecasting and looking out into the future, nationwide there's 19% inflation just last year alone on power costs. But as you can see, there was some rate discounts in the near past, and then our rate increase just started this year, and it'll go up another 5% next year. But we're at currently right about where we were in 2019 for rates. But in full disclosure, that'll go up a little bit next year. So that 4.8 cents per kilowatt hour will be now like 5.1. So I want to be honest about that. But that goes into some of the infrastructure investments we've made and also just inflation. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Go down in Nebraska, you go over in Iowa, Minnesota, you see wind towers everywhere. There aren't any in this immediate area. Is there a reason for that? Is it not windy here?
You can all attest it's plenty windy most of the time. They do look for geographic features where wind is typically more prevalent. At the same time, is it quantity? Who has access to the land? Who's going to build it? Who's going to invest in it? How are you going to build transmission to get to it? So that's a great question, but it has so many follow-up questions that need to come after it that kind of eliminates certain things. So whenever you're looking at building new generation, people always want to look at the source. Like how many megawatts did this sucker put out? And really, the added investment of transmission and other things almost make it impossible. And the rights of way that have to be procured in order to get the power where it needs to be can limit some areas for consideration. It's not that it can't happen, it just hasn't happened yet. Does that help? A little bit? Yeah, go ahead.
Not a good question, this gentleman's question. There are some facilities that were built, I see, their own on a small scale. So a high school campus, for example.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah, there are, Minnesota has an entire Solar for Schools program that's behind the meter generation. And we work with plenty of people in our member communities when we always want to talk with them first, just to talk about distribution. We want them to talk to your utility first, but there are other ways. Yeah.
I mean, looking at on your chart, yeah, that was great that with all the inflation and everything for the ground until 23 we had taken rates or it was good. Now I see that's inching up. So what's the impact of do we have state and federal funds currently as well? And is that going to change? And how is that going to look ahead of from here on now?
So if I'm hearing you correct, will any state or federal funds benefit these rates? No. I'll say no, because any investments made into the federal hydropower program will have cost pressures associated with them. So any investments made in infrastructure to the dams, which are currently going on, like they're doing a $1 billion project on the Garrison Dam spillway. That's one of the reasons behind this uptick from WAPA and just these cost pressures, but we're not immune to inflationary rates across the board. But
thinking of that federal funding or state funding, why you have to do legwork with legislature to make this going So what are the objectives? What do you have to specifically know? An essential product necessary, utility energy is needed. So why do we have to do that?
Because there's an effort to privatize those federal hydropower programs. Or there's not enough investment to upkeep them and keep them kicking out the megawatts they need to kick out. So like any other thing, these are 80, 100-year resources, but now we're in that 80-year range. They need some upkeep. Keep them efficient, make them more efficient, upgrade them. If we don't advocate for that, their efficiency will drop. But there is a cost to keeping them efficient. Am I not answering your question? Are we going on different tracks? But as far as federal funding, I mean, tax exempt funding is one thing, but we don't get any input from the feds. We do apply for grants when it makes sense. We have a number of grants we work on behalf of our members. I'm not going to go through these last two slides because I'm running out of time, but we have a number of other programs. The one I will highlight, Wade's here. Wade's from our energy services team. This is super important for Vermillion as well. Our Bright Energy Solutions program works with residential customers and business customers on electrification incentives. Since the program's inception, we've paid nearly $1 million to Vermillion in rebates. Different businesses and homes here in Vermillion. If you're interested in more, feel free to talk to Wade and Todd. I mean, they're working hard to get a key accounts program going here, and it's super beneficial to the utility and the businesses. The only other thing I'll talk about is Ambassador. Rich is one of 19. Thank you, sir. John already left, which is okay, but he's on our Policymaker Council. And if you have any other questions or want to learn more about Missouri River Energy, feel free to reach out to me or Wade or John. You have a tremendous advocate on the Missouri River Board with John at the helm. So I'll just leave you with that. This is our vision. So in addition to our mission, our vision is to be the preferred provider of energy and energy services to communities. And I hope you understand the value of joint action, value of public power, and how we try to live up to that vision every day. So thank you for your time. Feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Yep.
But hold on, no, you have one other task yet. We do a 50-50 draw. I like the speakers to do this because then I don't have to be accountable.
Can't look in there first, can you?
No, you can't.
This is more pressure than the presentation.
Let's see, I got to put my glasses back on now and find out